Honestly, today is just one of those days. I woke up and started the day off really negatively, and then things just happen. It's just one of those days where like everything goes wrong, you know? So I apologize for the minimal makeup. I was gonna do a whole lot more, but I am very excited about today's video topic, and I think it will cheer me up because talking to you guys, I've been vlogging today. Talking to you always makes me feel better. And today we're going to be talking all about phobias. I'm gonna talk about, I don't even know what they are, symptoms, causes for phobias, which is the most fascinating part to me. Like, why do we get phobias? Like, what makes them happen even? The different kinds, the most popular, and I just want to tell you guys there's not going to be any imagery of any kind in this video, mostly because I don't want it to be triggering. I don't do these videos for clicks or, I don't do them for shock factor. I don't clickbait with these videos. They are just purely educational and just a discussion of a psychology topic that I'm very interested in. That's usually what these videos are, so I'm not going to put any imagery that's going to scare any of you or like trigger any phobias that you might have, because phobias are really common. I also have two specific phobias that I'll be talking about later on in the video and kind of going into my dealing with those and things like that. So phobias are an anxiety disorder that's based on an irrational fear. They can be either specific phobias, social phobia, or agoraphobia. Those are the three categories of phobias. Usually their perception of the danger is a lot greater than what it actually is, hence the term irrational. They don't make sense necessarily, and usually social phobia, agoraphobia are a little bit more extreme than specific phobias, not necessarily in their symptoms, just that they can impair the person's life a whole lot more because you interact with people on a daily basis sometimes. I mean, if you leave the house, I don't know. Or with agoraphobia, in really extreme cases, you cannot leave your house, which that would very much impact your daily life. Specific phobias can be just as impacting on your life, depending what they are. For instance, arachnophobia, fear of spiders, one of the most common out there, doesn't necessarily impact your life on an everyday basis. Now, just to be diagnosed with a phobia doesn't mean you necessarily have a panic attack every single time you think about it, experience it, face it, anything like that. It just has to be an overwhelming amount of stress and anxiety that's somewhat debilitating on your life and you can't function as normal. I personally have never had a panic attack ever, but I do suffer from two specific phobias. A phobia is also when a person starts organizing their life around this fear. So the top 10 most popular phobias in the United States and the UK are social phobias. Number 1, which is fear of being in places with a lot of people or being judged or scrutinized or embarrassed in public. Agoraphobia is when you are afraid of being in a situation where you become helpless or open spaces or there's no escape, things like that, which both of those I did talk about in my anxiety disorders video, because those are two specific categories of an anxiety disorder that are separate from specific phobias. And the last 8 are claustrophobia, which is the fear of being in confined spaces, aerophobia, fear of flying, arachnophobia, fear of spiders, driving phobia, hey, emetophobia, fear of vomiting, which, I can relate, but I don't have a phobia, but I hate it. Erythrophobia, fear of blushing, hypochondria, fear of becoming ill, and zoophobia, fear of animals. So those are all the most common. Of course, there's a million out there. For some reason, when I was in high school, I was fascinated by phobias so much that I would study the list of phobias online. So the symptoms, they become debilitating when the person goes out of their way to avoid this situation at all costs. Most of the time, people who have phobias understand that they're irrational. They do want to overcome them. They just physically can't, and they don't know how to not be afraid or be anxious in those situations. For me, when I have to face my phobia, I get really sweaty, like clammy, just all over. I feel like I have cold sweats. My heart definitely races. I have a tightness in my chest. I definitely get the butterflies in my stomach, and lately, since, I don't know, the past 2 years, I'd say, I get this feeling of passing out. And for me, definitely thinking about the phobia triggers a lot of these symptoms. So the causes of phobias, this is where it gets so interesting to me because they often don't develop after age 30. A lot of times specific phobias will develop in childhood, and most of the time they clear up by adolescence. Mine did not. Mine actually developed within adolescence and have since mostly cleared up. I definitely have anxiety about my phobias still, but I'll talk about that in a second. So most research has shown that there's two ways to develop a phobia. The first is experience something highly traumatic and thus it creates your fear. That could be an extreme car accident that made you afraid of driving, or being confined to a space that you felt like you couldn't escape and then later in life you're afraid of confined spaces. Or there's the way that you can develop it by learned fears, which is how I myself have developed both of my phobias. There's also the theory that there's an evolution explanation for why we have phobias. So like every phobia can be tied back to our ancestors and what could possibly have been a threat to them. For instance, agoraphobia, being afraid of open spaces. Back in the day when we didn't have much protection or anything, if you were in a broad open space, there was a higher chance that you would be attacked either by an animal or just something else. Obviously there's the evolution explanation of being afraid of certain animals, spiders, snakes, things like that. Fear of falling to your death, fear of heights, you know, flying, that kind of thing. It's because we don't want to die. But if that's the case, why wouldn't everyone have those fears, you know? So now I'm going to talk a little bit about my own experience with phobias and how I developed mine. So my mother growing up, I saw her be deathly afraid of driving and the dentist. Those are my two phobias as well, is dentists and driving, both of which I've had to overcome. My mom, however, has not been so lucky in overcoming them. And it's really a touchy subject for me to talk about because it is my parent, and you know, I don't want to air her life story on here. She's very open about like, oh, well, you can put me on your channel. Like, I don't mind if you talk about me. So I'm hoping that still stands when talking about her phobia. I had to face my dental phobia so much, especially in the last couple of years, that it was just like debilitating. I would feel exhausted. If I have a dental appointment, that is all I do for the whole day. I have to mentally prepare. I want it to be in the morning, and then the rest of the day I sleep. Like, that's how exhausting it is to me to have to go to the dentist, even for a cleaning. I broke down crying in dentist's office, and it's just, I've had to have medicine prescribed to me to do procedures because I just cannot calm down. It's been really difficult. I think on top of witnessing my mom's dental phobia, I also had a very traumatic experience. I've had two very traumatic experiences with dentists that is really difficult for me to talk about, and I generally don't like to. One of which was an emergency root canal, and the other was a situation where I was getting a crown put on and they did not give me enough Novocaine, and I felt the whole procedure. I did have a little bit of a mental breakdown after feeling a whole procedure. My mom actually called them to tell them like a year later because it was that bad. It's just, I've just been through a lot with my teeth, and I've had to face a lot. I have missing teeth and I have to get implants put in, and I have not initiated that process because A, money, but also B, my fear. And I've gone through Invisalign, as you guys know. That alone was really difficult as well, because it's not just getting plastic put on your teeth for Invisalign. There's a lot more to the procedure than that, and it was very, very hard. My mom was not so fortunate to face her dental fears. She actually needs to get dentures now. She's not that old, but she does need dentures because she's missing a majority of her teeth, and it's really hard to share and talk about. I feel for her because I understand how much fear that goes into having a dental phobia. And then my other phobia, driving. You guys know this. I've done multiple videos about it. I've had near panic attacks when it comes to driving, and often when I get the symptoms of feeling of passing out, it's while I'm driving. Honestly, I should probably not drive because of sometimes my fear is so bad. But sometimes it's completely non-existent. Well, I don't know if you guys know this about me. I've shared before that I took 6 years at a community college, right? I have 4 associate degrees because of it. I changed my major multiple times. And I don't think I've ever told you guys that part of the reason why I did that, why it took me so long, is my driving phobia. Because where I was living at the time when I was going to community college, I was either near a bus stop or walking distance, and I would just go to school. It was super simple. I didn't have to drive. Then it came to the point where, okay, I've taken as many classes as I can at this community college for 6 years. I have to either ride the bus for an hour a day or 2 hours a day to go to school at the university that I ended up going to and graduating from. It's in a different city, and so I had to either do public transportation or overcome my fear and get a car. Obviously I chose to get a car and overcome my fear. I got my license, I think, at 22. I didn't start driving really until 24. And then I transferred to Sac State, and that's when I really started driving, when I got my car. Anyway, so I had to overcome it. It was definitely through my own version of exposure therapy and desensitizing myself to driving. I still vividly remember the first time I drove on a freeway. I was actually pretty calm. My biggest thing for me is to have someone in the car that knows how to drive and that I trust. So if there ever was a situation, I know that they could immediately take control and or take over driving if necessary. And then with dental thing, how I face that nowadays is my stepdad is usually my ride. I ask him to drive me because I have to drive myself to my other phobia, if that makes sense. Like, I already have heightened anxiety, so I have to face a phobia to get myself to another phobia. Like, that's just too much in one day. So I usually have someone drive me to my dental appointments. It sounds horrible, right? It sounds like I'm such a baby. I see people like all the time just go to the dentist and go back to work right after and they're fine. I can't do that. Like, it's just, it's irrational. I don't understand it at all. And I can't explain it to someone who doesn't have the fear or understand the fear. Anyway, I'm just kind of rambling on about this and my experience a little bit, but I hope it kind of helps to understand like what the symptoms are and like what people go through in their thought process of experiencing phobias. And they definitely are something to be taken seriously. I feel like a lot of people are considered babies or overreacting. But when it comes to anxiety, nothing about anxiety is overreacting. When you have that, it's not overreacting, I promise. Panic attacks, not overreacting. I don't have that great advice. If you want to see my other driving videos, I will link them up here for you so you can kind of hear my advice more specifically for driving. I haven't really done one on dental. If you want a whole video on dental, my dental phobia and stuff, I think I talked pretty in depth about it here, but let me know. Also, let me know your experience with your phobia if you do have one down below. And anything that you've done to help, if you've tried, you know, different treatments for it, such as exposure therapy, psychotherapy, antidepressants. There's a lot of different medications you can also take. Let me know your experiences down below, what you found works for you, and also leave some more requests for psychology videos down below. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.